Hello, and welcome to the 741 channel. Thank you for stopping by. It's 2 meter night on Monday Night Ham Radio, and I thought I'd go old school. Tonight we're going to take a look at this old KDK 2 meter FM mobile that I've had kicking around. This thing's probably about 40 years old, but still in pretty good shape and works just fine. Anyway, let's get in and take a closer look at this thing. I hope you guys think it's as cool as I do. Okay, so here it is, the KDK FM2016A. And of course the A on the end of the model number there stands for awesome. Anyway, you can see just from first glance, it looks a little bit like an old tram CB radio, but it's far from that. If you lift this thing up, it probably weighs twice as much as one of those old trams. In fact, I think it weighs somewhere around 5.5 pounds. The only thing plastic on this thing are the knobs and the covers over the meter and the display here. The rest of this thing is just a solid chunk of metal bolted together. You can see even the heatsink on the back is pretty stout. I think this radio puts out about 25 watts on high power and maybe 5 on low. I'm not real sure, but you can see this thing was built real well. If I remember right from reading through the manual, I think KDK claims that you could transmit with this radio with no antenna and it won't hurt the final transistors. I don't know that I would do that for very long, but it's good to know that they kind of over-designed it in case you ever were to run without your antenna connected by accident for some reason and didn't catch it right away. Even the power cable is beefy on this thing. It's a 2-pin Centronics, just like a microphone cable. So I'll fire it up and we'll take a look at some of the features of this radio. Now, the cool thing about this radio is that you can tune it very quickly. Now, you may be able to notice on the display here that we don't have the full frequency readout. You know, where's the 1 and the 4? Well, the 1 and the 4 never change when you're on 2 meters. So what KDK did is they just silkscreened it in the label here. I don't know if you guys can see it up there in the corner, but they're just there. And this last digit in the megahertz register is the only one that changes. And I can change that by turning this control here. You can see right now it's on 146, and I can choose anywhere between 144 and 148. And then if I want to dial in the rest of the frequency, I use the twin controls here. The outer control changes the tenths register, and the inner control changes the hundredths. So there's 14652. Now if you need to go up 5 kilohertz, you can do that by flipping up this toggle switch. And now we've got 525. Now that might seem a little bit clunky by modern standards, but it just works. You don't need a programming cable or a manual to figure out how to tune the frequency on this thing. Now, if you want to run repeaters on this radio, you can change it from simplex mode, which it's in now, to -600 or +600. Now, there's no indication on the display which one you're in, so you got to look at the line on the knob, but that's no big deal. The only downfall here is that you have to remember or know what your repeater's offset is. The radio does have a PL tone or CTCSS tone generator in it, but it's only got one. So what you have to do is you have to open the radio up and you have to set it for the frequency that you want. And you can turn it on by flipping up this switch or leave it off. Now, one of the cool features on this radio that really appeals to me is the old analog needle type signal meter. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of SDRs and waterfalls and spectrum scopes, but I just really like a radio with an old style analog meter. But this meter also functions as a discrimination meter. Radios back in the day weren't quite as frequency stable as they are now. So sometimes you had to use the RIT control, or what CBers would know sort of as a clarifier, and tune them in. And what that discrimination meter does is it helps you tune that frequency that you're trying to receive right to the center frequency by turning this control here. So here's what the radio looks like inside. Now the quality here is not only skin deep, and all of these components are all from the same family. So for instance, all the electrolytic capacitors in here appear to be ELNA capacitors. They didn't mix and match manufacturers based on what they could get cheapest. They stuck with all the same manufacturer. Same goes with all of these tunable chokes. These are all Mitsumi chokes, good quality units. If we take a look at the variable resistors, you can see that they're all plastic encapsulated sealed units. They're not those flimsy cheap metal ones that you'd see inside of like a CB radio from this era. And then looking at all these integrated circuits over here, these are all Toshiba branded 4000 series CMOS chips, good quality components for their day. And even the memory battery is beefy. It's an old KDK battery. It's 40 years old and it's still working. I didn't pull the schematic on this or anything, but I think what we have going on here is this side of the board is the memory and display driver. These two big Toshiba chips are the memory chips. This row of chips over here are the 7-segment drivers for the display. And I believe this side of the board is the voltage controlled oscillator. You can see all the adjustable chokes, the variable resistors. There's some trimmer capacitors there and some crystals. Now back here under this Faraday cage would be the final output stage. I'm not going to try and pull this cage out of here, but presumably the final output transistors are under there, along with the driver circuits and all that stuff. Let's flip it over and take a look at the other side. So I'm no expert in radio design, and like I said, I didn't pull the schematic or the block diagram, but just looking at this board, I think what we're looking at is sort of the receiver, maybe the transmit exciter, and some audio circuits under here as well. Right here is the main transmit receive relay. Over here you can see that we've got a nice Murata ceramic filter. And just like the topside circuit board, KDK was consistent in using the Elna caps, the Mitsumi chokes, the Toshiba logic chips, and other high quality parts. So here in the main circuit board is a cutout, sort of a clearance for the main magnet of the speaker over here when the case is closed. But one thing you may not be able to see in the camera is that there's a solid chunk of metal underneath this circuit board and then another one over here. Presumably this one that's under the back part is the heatsink for the final output transistors, and then this one here is just some other sort of heatsink for the rest of it, or maybe just structural, I'm not sure, but this is part of what's given this radio so much heft. So I've spun the radio around so that we can kind of see behind the front panel. I'm not going to take it off, but just like the rest of the parts on the radio, all the controls and switches that are mounted to the front panel appear to be good, high-quality components. The only thing I'll take points off for is some of the wiring in here seems a little bit on the thin and flimsy side, but other than that, this radio is built like a tank. So what I'm going to do now is an on-the-air audio test. Well, not exactly on the air. I'm going to use a dummy load, but what I'm going to do is compare the transmit audio from the KDK to a few other radios. I've got a Baofeng UV-5R here, I've got an Anytone 878, and I've got my Yaesu FT2900 over here. And I've got my SDR Play RSP-DX set up on the computer over there with a pigtail antenna on it. So what I'll do is set up SDR Uno to record, and then I'll hook each one of these radios up to the dummy load one at a time. We'll do a test transmission, and then I'll play back the recording and we can see what each radio sounds like.
This is N1 NUG, November 1, November Uniform Golf, testing the KDK FM2016A 2-meter transceiver on a dummy load. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. November 1, November Uniform Golf. For comparison, this is November 1, November Uniform Golf, testing the Yaesu FT2900 on a dummy load. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. November 1, November Uniform Golf. Just for a further point of comparison, this is November 1, November Uniform Golf, testing the Baofeng UV-5R on a dummy load. November 1, November Uniform Golf, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. November 1, November Uniform Golf. Just as another point of comparison, this is November 1, November Uniform Golf, testing the Anytone UV-878 on a dummy load. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. November 1, November Uniform Golf. This is N1 NUG, November 1, November Uniform Golf, testing the KDK FM2016A 2-meter transceiver on a dummy load. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. November 1, November Uniform Golf.
So now that the transmit test is over, I'll set the KDK up on my 2-meter antenna that's outside. We'll tune around and see if we can hear anything on it so you guys can get an idea of what the received audio sounds like.
We're obviously monitoring the Paxton repeater closely on the storm here. For anyone that's listening, it is 2020 Skywarn Recognition Day. We cannot be at the Weather Service due to COVID, but our warning coordination meteorologist, Glenn, is on the air for a couple of hours here this morning for SRD, and also a good time to give storm observations. So we'll turn it over to Glenn to say a couple things, and if we have any folks monitoring the frequency, it would be good to contact Glenn, and you can give him from the report.
Okay, thanks, Rob. This is KB1GHX, Glenn Field from the National Weather Service, WX1BOX, for Skywarn Recognition Day.
Whiskey X-Ray 1 Lima, Shrewsbury, light snow developing.
WX1 Helen, Shrewsbury, thank you for that report. Can we get your name and the temperature as well?
Name is Jim, temperature currently 35 degrees, over.
I've got that, thank you very much.
If you were to use open line, okay, you can't have it running parallel to the dipole. You can't. It'll affect it greatly. It'll screw everything up, and you'll be wasting all your time.
Yeah, well, like I said, if I were to put up a dipole, I wouldn't stretch it out from the deck. I'd do it right from the bedroom window, straight out towards the trees.
Okay, so there's the KDK FM2016A. I really like this old radio. Like I said, I think the A on the end of the model number stands for awesome. So, in all honesty here, full disclosure, I did have to tinker with the old KDK a little bit to get it to work. When I went to do the transmit test, for some reason, the transmit-receive relay inside decided to stop working and the radio wouldn't transmit. So I had to open it up and tap it with a screwdriver to get those contacts to move. But once I did that, it was okay. So I guess I've got another project in the future to replace that relay. But that's one of the things I like about ham radio. I like tinkering with the old stuff and getting it going and keeping it going. So let me know down in the comments what you think. After having seen the video, would you like a radio like this KDK in your shack to kind of fool around with? Or do you prefer sort of the new modern stuff that has all the bells and whistles and just works when you turn it on? Personally, I actually like both. There's times when I'm in the mood to operate the new stuff, or I want to explore a new technology or newer technology like DMR, but there's other times where I just want to kick back and have that old school radio experience, knobs and switches and relays and that kind of a thing. But like I said, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you want to see more great content from other ham radio creators on YouTube, there's another link down in the description below that will take you to a web page with more information. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. If you'd like to support my channel in another way, please consider visiting my Amazon store, which is linked in the description below. Thanks.